everyone hear me? Thank you for having me here this morning. Talk about imposter syndrome. I'm here talking to you as a cardiologist from Iowa in front of many women who have written the books on burnout and who have published studies on burnout. So I'm truly humbled, and I would be remiss if I did not thank Dr. Roberta Gebhardt and Dr. Joni Ye for really being my promoters and supporters, and if it wasn't for these women, I would not be here. This is a picture of my prairie in Iowa, and what is so symbolic about this, that in order for a prairie to flourish, you have to burn it down. And I think it's symbolic about what we have to do as women physicians, and of course, I can't figure out how to use this. I'm an electrophysiologist and can't use a remote. There it is. Okay, thank you, whoever helped me. So to talk about burnout, we have to talk about 3 symptoms, and I know there have been many lectures over the last several days about burnout. But the main components are emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a loss of a sense of self-accomplishment. I was going to put all of the specialties up in America and look at burnout, but I think it doesn't need to be a competition about who's burnt out more than someone else. What I wanted to point out is that the people who are most burnt out are not the ones that you think. Those who are depersonalized and angry, those are who are obvious. But your physicians and your colleagues who have high patient satisfaction scores, those are the physicians who are more likely to have emotional exhaustion, who pour every ounce of their day into caring for their patients and come home with an empty tank. Those are the doctors who kill themselves. Those are the doctors that we don't see are suffering in silence. Who are we as physicians? We have traits that draw us into medicine. We care tremendously about our patients, about our families, about our careers. We're perfectionists. We're type A. We are overachievers. We want to do everything perfectly to the best of our ability. And we also like jobs that are secure. We want to go and have a job and stay at that job forever because it's safe. And when we feel as though we are not doing well or we are stressed, we isolate ourselves. We like to deal with our problems alone and in silence and in quiet. We can't control our lives, but we can certainly control how we react to what happens in our lives. And I am a huge fan of Maya Angelou. I think she was a brilliant woman, still struggling. So how am I here? I'm here because I am all of those things in the personality. I went to medical school through an accelerated program. So I went to school at a very young age. I was very successful. I went into a field that is 6% women. And I was in all looks and on the outside, had everything made. I clearly had very bad eyebrows while I was in school. And why no one told me is a whole nother story. So what happened? Well, I got my eyebrows threaded and developed a sense of fashion. Oh, can you just do the next slide for me? I'm really struggling, I'm sorry. So what happened? When I left my training, I moved to California because it was beautiful and because it was warm and it was somewhere I always wanted to go. But the problem with moving to the land of my fantasy and my dreams is that I had no support system. I had no family, I had no friends, and I had no colleagues. I joined a group that had never had a female physician. And when I joined that group, the only other electrophysiologist left. So I had no mentor. And this woman here who gave me her permission to use her photo was a pediatric ICU nurse who had SVT and had AVNRT, and a very well-liked woman who, when I was doing her ablation, I gave her complete heart block and she needed a pacemaker. And this was very early on into my training. And then I had a baby. And for those of you who care for babies, you can notice that there's something clearly wrong with my baby. And when I delivered her, as a cardiologist, and if this was a grown-up, this would be a vascular emergency, but I was so insecure in my knowledge as a mother that I didn't really speak up initially. I didn't speak up about how I felt. I had to give my baby Lovenox for a month. Because I was a physician, no one ever asked me how that would make me feel. And this is how I felt. These are things that I said to my husband, and it is no wonder that he was afraid to leave me alone with our daughter. Excuse me. But you know what? The problem was shame, because I wanted to be perfect. Women for centuries have taken and delivered babies and cared for babies. I saved people's lives, and I could not care for my child. I couldn't bond with my child. I couldn't live my life anymore, and I didn't know who I was. So what happens when we burn out and we don't recognize it? All of the energy you have, the excitement that you look forward to when you start your day becomes exhaustion. When you care about your patients, now you're cynical. They become problems, as someone had said earlier in the session, instead of people. When you are productive, you are now inefficient because you can't function anymore. This study, this paper, I think was brilliant. Dr. Gazelle wrote a paper about coaching your way out of burnout. So what she described was a wheel of life, and they're all the components in your life that are essential to keep you whole. So I plotted myself in hindsight about how I felt during this period of time in my life. And that is one janky-ass wheel. That wheel is going nowhere. And looking at it from afar and looking at it objectively, it is very clear to see why I burned out. I was not fulfilled in so many areas of my life. I lived somewhere that was beautiful. I had a husband that I loved but who I never saw, and we never connected. I had a baby that I didn't know how to bond with, and I just wasn't whole. And nothing works unless you first work. And so many women have said this. It is not selfish to take care of yourself. It is necessary. And we need to stop feeling that way. I'm getting a little bit overwhelmed with all of the literature that's coming out about burnout as a doctor problem. We need to be more resilient. Burnout is not a doctor problem. We are resilient. We went to medical school. We did internship, residency, fellowship. That is the definition of resilience. That is not the problem. So what is the problem? The problem is our culture. How we treat each other and how we expect each other to behave. Oh, thank you. We expect our colleagues and ourselves to be perfect, and perfect is impossible because my definition of perfect and your definition of perfect are not the same. So we need to stop believing that there is something that we need to achieve because it is impossible. We also need to be vulnerable and emotional with each other. When a patient dies, it is certainly okay to cry. When your patient gets a terrible diagnosis, it is okay to cry, and we need to stop teaching our students and our residents that it's not okay. We have to stop emphasizing workaholism. It is okay to leave to go pick up your sick child. It is okay to go and take a flight to take care of your dying mother. These things are okay, and they should not be discouraged, and you should not be penalized for it. You shouldn't be penalized for getting sick or getting pregnant and having to take care of your family. And we always forget that it took us so long to get where we are that we blow over our accomplishments. Take a minute and recognize your successes. Swim in it, bathe in it, breathe it, and don't look for the next thing that you have to do. Recognize how far you have come. So I like to think of your life as balls. And so just like the wheel of life that we talked about, if you're juggling balls, all of these balls are glass except for one that is rubber. And one of those balls you can drop and it will never break or scar or shatter. And all of the others will. But which ball is rubber and is the one that we never drop? It's work. We always commit everything to work and let everything else go by the wayside. And we are dropping those glass balls over and over again. Guess what? We're physicians. You'll have a job anywhere you want. You will always have a job. And if the job isn't meeting your needs, then find another job and stop dropping your other balls. Take care of yourselves. So we have to figure out what we can do. What can we do? We can't change the EMR, we can't change healthcare in the United States. What can you do to make your day better? You can manage how you expect your day to go. What do you expect of other people? What do you expect of yourself? Is it realistic? Is there something you can do to change your day that makes your day more gratifying? And are you willing to change how you see what's going on around you? Because you can't change how your day is formatted, but you can certainly change your mindset about that day. And I have made it a point not to have the word mindfulness in my slides. Oh boy. Because you can't yoga and tree pose your way out of burnout. But you can be mindful in little things that you do throughout your day. And the main thing is you have to find happiness. And happiness is not something that's on the outside. Happiness always comes internally, and seeking happiness externally is one of our major problems. So you have to find ways throughout your day and through your career that make you happy. So I'm an electrophysiologist. Electrophysiologists ablate AFib primarily. I hate AFib and I hate ablation. And I did it for 12 years and pretended like I loved it, and then realized I really don't like this. So what do I love? I love taking care of syncope, which most people dislike, but it gives me an opportunity to connect with my patients. I love talking about risk factor modification. I love heart failure and end of life. So I started changing my day and changing who I see in my clinic, and I stopped ablating. That alone was like, praise the Lord, why didn't I do that 10 years ago? But I felt like an imposter because EPs ablate, so if I don't ablate, I'm not an EP. Well, I still am an EP, and I'm a really good EP, and I'm really good at what I do. I like devices, I like syncope, and now that's all I do. I also, shocking, went to 4 days a week, something else that seemed like a failure. If I'm not full-time, I'm not a real doctor. That's baloney. I work 4 days a week, and I'm happier than I've ever been in my whole life, and guess what? I get to see my children. So you have to figure out what brings you joy. Thank you. You have to figure out what brings you joy, and at least do that 20% of your time. That is the critical number. 20% of your week, if you do what you love, it will protect you from being drained from all of the things that you don't love. And I also try and get something back in my patient visits. I used to come home with my tank empty. So now what I do in the room is I'm present. I am there, and I make sure that my patients give me something to fill my tank back up, so that I leave that room feeling full and engaged. I also, before I go in the room, take a moment with my hand on the doorknob and just pause. It takes 5 or 6 seconds to become present again before I go into the next encounter and leave whatever happened with the patient who doesn't do anything you tell them to do in that room, so that I can be there with the patient that I'm currently seeing. We have to stop being perfect. We have to stop thinking that everything is about us all the time, every day. They don't have small scrubs in the OR. Oh, they must not like me. Why can't they have my size? It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with me. Stop putting yourself in the middle of everything. Stop worrying. You can't change what's already happened, and we have no idea what's happening. Learn to stay where we are, in the moment, in the present, because usually right now is pretty good, and it's pretty neutral. And just try and stay there. The all or the nevers. He always does this. He never answers his pager. He always does things halfway. Stop doing that. Look for the good. Look for the gratitude. Look for the amazing things. This charter on physician well-being came out last year, and I think it's brilliant because I think it labels what I was feeling was missing from medicine. We went into medicine to take care of patients, not to type into computers. And it's finding a way to reconnect and get that engagement with your patients in whatever you do during the day. I went to a wellness course in Rochester, and one of the things that they said was in that first 2 minutes, or 1 minute, just don't log into the computer. Just sit with your patient for 60 seconds. And that interaction and that focus on the moment will help renew you throughout your day. So what can we do? We need to really be vocal about making sure that we're having meaningful interactions throughout our day. We have to make sure that we're actually taking care of patients, unless that's something you don't like to do, and that's okay. But do what you want to do during your day. Don't do what someone else thinks you should be doing. We have to have an environment where we can be emotionally open with each other without judgment, without consequences, without fearing that if you tell someone you make a mistake, that you will be penalized. We all make mistakes, and it is ingrained in us in our training that you shouldn't make mistakes and that we treat you with shame if you do, and that needs to change. We have to let people enjoy, here I am apologizing, whoever said stop apologizing, I'm trying. We have to be more efficient, so we're being asked to do more and more with less and less. So I don't have a scribe. I hear they're amazing, but I don't have one. But if there are things that you could do to make your life more efficient, then do it. Because it's about also living the rest of your life and not spending your whole life. There we go. I'm tired of clicking. We have to do meaningful work, and we have to promote self-care. And that doesn't mean forcing people to do wellness. I was speaking with some students earlier in the week who said they have dedicated wellness time and they're all forced to sit in small groups and talk about their feelings. Like, that's not the answer. Just like with our colleagues in Time's Up, you can't administrate these things. What you do is encourage people to do what's right for them. But you have to take the time, and what we need is different for everybody. Some people need to run, some people need to paint, some people need to sew, some people need an awesome manicure. Whatever it is, just do it. That's what we need to do. I don't know if anyone's read Man's Search for Meaning, but it is one of the books that changed my life. There is always space between a stimulus and a response. You think there is never time in your day, there is always time, and you find that time. So what did I do? I found a group online of women physicians that empowered me to become my true self, that let me know it was okay to wear lipstick and heels and not worry about being sexually harassed by my colleagues. It is okay to be feminine, and it is okay to be smart. I went to Fiji and volunteered. I'm a cardiologist and thought, what am I going to do in a medical mission in Fiji? Well, guess what? I'm still a doctor, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And I moved to Iowa to get away from the toxicity in the work environment that I was in. We are human beings, and human beings need connection. It is from the beginning of time we have lived in tribes, we have lived in small communities, and we have to stay connected, and you have to intentionally connect with people throughout your day, in your work, in your community, in your faith. You have to find connection and find your sisters, because your sisters will keep you whole and keep you grounded. So this is my wheel now. It's a little less janky, but it's not perfect. I realized a few weeks ago that I was starting to burn out again, and really took a moment because I recognized it in myself. I had withdrawn from social media, which was my first clue. I was starting to get irritable with my patients. So I actually took time for myself and realized that I like hip-hop music. That brings me joy. So I started doing YouTube videos on hip-hop dancing online, and now I'm feeling a lot better about myself. So you have to find the why for your existence, and this is mine. I am very grateful to my husband, who has lived with me through some very rough times, and now I have two amazing, beautiful children. Thank you.